So as you know, we've talked about several times on the channel, the CBO, which is the Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan. They just run the numbers. Basically, the poorest Americans are going to get hurt the most from Trump's tax and budget policy, and the wealthiest, right, the billionaire class, are going to benefit. That's what it all boils down to. Now Trump's got JD Vance out trying to defend said policy against tax cuts for rich, hurting the poor. What do you say about this, Vance?
Atlanta news first. I know you're here to talk about business and manufacturing. I wanted to ask you about the spending bill's impact on individuals. There was a nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office report that came out last week showing that the bottom 10%, the poorest Americans, would lose about $1,200, a year on their income, while the top 10%, they would add about $13,000 annually to their income. Can you justify for those poorest Americans those differences?
Well, first of all, the Congressional Budget Office, sometimes they put out reports that are absolutely atrocious, and I think this is a good example of a very atrocious report. The most important thing for people who are living at the bottom of the income ladder is that they not pay taxes on their income sources. So if you're working hard and you're working overtime, you're going to get a big fat tax cut. If you're working at a restaurant or some other business where you're earning your wages primarily through tips, you're going to get a big fat tax cut. And most importantly, the president's economic policies are going to prevent your job from being shipped off to Asia or to Mexico. That is the very best thing for people at the bottom of the income ladder. And that's why we have the economic policies that we do.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. First, you have to understand the basic premise is the CBO is saying, hey, if you're among the bottom 10%, say, of the USA, you're going to end up losing $1,200 a year. And that's factoring in the tax policy, also factoring in the healthcare cuts, food benefit cuts, et cetera, right? So just net, you're going to be down $1,200 a year. So Trump's policy is hurting the poorest Americans. And JD Vance's response is, well, the CBO is just atrocious. That's his response. And then he goes on to basically say, hey, no tax on tips, so we want you to work over 40 hours. We want you to be a restaurant server. Fantastic. And then I guess theoretically, in his point of view, we're protecting your job as a restaurant waiter or whatever from going to Asia. I mean, you can listen to this stuff, and I don't even know what to say with this stuff. I mean, I just have to show you what it is, because I think the issue is sort of who their audience is, the MAGA audience. And if you can easily fool these people, right, they'll go along with it. And the thing that's so frustrating about this stuff, and sort of why I like to talk about the big picture with you guys, sure, maybe you're going to get a tax break, and maybe you're going to get an extra, just for example, $200 in cash or whatever, right? Or maybe $300 a year, whatever it's going to end up being. The problem is though, just think of it in a whole other way. What if, for example, healthcare costs were minimal? What if it was free? You do the math in your own situation. You have family, you have parents, you have kids, you know your family situation. How much do you spend on healthcare costs? Just imagine if I could wipe that out completely. Let's say there's no healthcare costs, just for example. Like, that would be worth way more to you than having the whatever $200 tax cut that they're supposedly going to give you, whatever. But even again, the CBO is saying that you're going to be a net loser. I just want to make that clear, but it's telling you where the numbers come from. Or think about this. What if, for example, because this actually happens in other countries, not in the USA, but just for example, what if we had something like universal child care, so you didn't have to pay for child care costs? And anyone who knows about daycare, that stuff's expensive. I just saw an article in the Wall Street Journal. I mean, that stuff's really expensive. What if, your schools and your libraries and all these things were funded? What if your transportation, for example, let's say you didn't have to have a car, you didn't have to pay car insurance. What if you could just take the train on in to where your job is, right? I'm just giving just examples of stuff to where you have to think beyond, wow, no tax on overtime, no tax on tips. Like from the JD Vance kind of point of view, they want you to just basically be a worker, work 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And by the way, that whole no tax on tips thing, that's just temporary. Whereas the tax breaks that they have for billionaires and such, that's permanent. And you know what's even crazy? I didn't think I'd ever say this. I'm in agreement with Mike Pence here. I just did an interview. I just did a video just yesterday, and you guys saw it, talking about this chart that the White House tweeted out, and they were bragging about the whole tariff thing. Even Mike Pence is calling out the White House here. This is what Mike Pence says. Mike Pence says, American companies and American consumers pay the cost of American tariffs. Even Mike Pence is calling this stuff out. Time to get back to less taxes, less tariffs, and free trade for with free nations. So it's kind of crazy. And guys, I want to disagree on Mike Pence on stuff, but at least Mike Pence is telling you the truth on who's going to pay the tariffs. This is the bizarro world that we live in that I'm even agreeing with Mike Pence. But that kind of stuff isn't really an opinion. Like who pays the tariffs is not an opinion. That's the thing. And this is also something else that's going on in our crazy economic world. This is from the Wall Street Journal. It says the biggest retailers are thriving in a tariff economy. One of the things I've known, and you'll hear it reported from these kind of things, to where consumers at the upper levels are trading down and starting to, basically show up more and more at Walmart, Amazon, TJ Maxx, et cetera. And you'll hear these kind of reports. But there was something that was really interesting, which I didn't know. And I'll read it. It says, talking about people and shopping, it says, many shoppers are spending more time researching. So it means that, because the economic situation is so tough right now, people are spending more time thinking about, what kind of purchase that they're going to make, which totally makes sense, right? It says, so they're spending more time researching before they make a purchase. And this is an interesting stat. In the first half of the year, online shoppers clicked 18% more often, yet spending grew just 0.4%. Wow, think about that. So that means you're checking every website, every category. You're saying, hey, I need to get a new pair of socks or whatever. But you're looking at all the socks, and you're thinking about price, quality, etc. If you're that kind of shopper, and I can tell you guys, I totally am. I always try to make sure I get the best deal. My wife does the same thing, and you're checking around looking for coupons, all this kind of stuff. You guys know the routine, but 18% more means people are more and more doing this. And that's coming from analysis of 1,554 North American brands by impact.com. So I guess this is on multiple platforms where they got this number. Again, shoppers are clicking 18% more times. Fascinating. A platform for brands to manage partnerships with affiliates and influencers. Also saying here, consumers are holding off on larger home improvement projects. And we've talked about this before. With the tariff situation, right? It's just driving the cost of stuff. Also, it is creating so much uncertainty with people's, jobs, with the economy. And actually, a couple of people mentioned this, and now I saw yet another person commenting on the situation in the military. So I still haven't seen any news on it. And if you guys can confirm this, please, I'm literally just asking you in the community. One was a defense contractor saying we're on the defense contractor side. We've been hearing the cuts coming down the pipeline, which is strange because I haven't heard of any cuts to the military yet. But I'm telling people in the community saying. Another person said I'm in the military, that they're not renewing contracts or something. And then someone else said usually around this time of year they'll send out renewals, but they're not doing it. So I'm not sure what's going on over there. I do know that there's going to be, as we just saw in the last video, a lot of people in the FBI actually are going to be out. The Trump people offered them severance packages, and a whole bunch took it. It's 5,000 people are leaving, and there's all sorts of turmoil going on right now. So I mentioned the government stuff because those are all government work. If you have government layoffs on top of a slowing economy, on top of a soft consumer, and then you have JD Vance say, hey guys, you're just going to work overtime. Wow, you're going to be great. And, if you don't have a job, it doesn't matter what the overtime policy is going to be. You got nothing. And I think, put this together with the kind of stuff that, and I'll show you guys what else I'm looking at today, is the kind of world that the Trumps and the Vance, or we're talking about Elon Musk now, they just want you to be a worker, and they want you to just accept the laws of the billionaires. So this was a headline today. Elon Musk and X reached settlement with axed Twitter workers. And this has been a long running drama. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, they're the same kind of people. They like to, cheat people, basically is what it boils down to. The numbers are actually quite high. It says some workers sued the company over their terminations and severance packages after some 6,000 staff, it's really a lot, more than half its workforce were sacked. And then I guess Musk, they're working on some sort of settlement, had sued for 500 million in severance pay. So, that's something that actually happens quite a lot, and you should do this. And the reason why I go over this stuff with you guys is because I just want you to know that you're not alone in these struggles. And for the average people, I don't know why anyone would, support this billionaire class. It's bizarre, but they do because they beat the Trumps or the Vance or the Musk. They try to, basically put a little dog whistle, red meat thing and kind of hypnotize you, like, hey, let's be racist together and let's just like talk about racist stuff. Oh yeah, good idea. And that's what they do. They get you to like vote against your interests, right? Just get you hating on another group of people, and they completely ignore the economic realities that you're all facing. And that's why I like to talk about the money stuff, because I think at the end of the day, that's what really matters to protecting your family, your home, and your future. So I just wanted to give you guys an update of what's going on. I know it's not always the happiest news all the time, but I do think it's important to talk about. Thank you for your time, and I'll catch you all in the next video.